You're watching the 4:20 o'clock news on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal. These are today's headlines. The defense lawyer at the Special Tribunal for Lebanon says former President Emil Lahoud and his clique in the Lebanese Syrian security apparatus may have had motive to kill former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. Tunisian authorities named the two gunmen who launched an attack on a museum that killed 19 people in Tunisia. And U.S. and Iranian negotiators enter a fourth day of tough talks towards a landmark nuclear deal, with Tehran's foreign minister talking down prospects for a breakthrough this week. Former President Emil Lahoud and his clique in the Lebanese Syrian security apparatus may have had motive to kill former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri, according to a defense lawyer at the Special Tribunal for Lebanon. Referencing excerpts from a report by an unidentified UN analyst, defense lawyer Guinea Metro suggested that while Hariri's ties with the Syrian regime were on the mend at the time of his assassination, he was on particularly bad terms with then President Emil Lahoud. Metro suggested Hariri's rapprochement with the Syrian regime and his anticipated success in the 2005 parliamentary polls posed a risk to Lahoud's own political fortunes. Hariri's political ally Bassem Sabeh, however, denied knowledge of any rapprochement between the Syrian regime and Hariri. Tensions ran high during today's cabinet session as Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi and Minister of State Mohammed Fnish clashed over Rifi's recent accusations that Hezbollah are guilty of tax evasion and money laundering. Walking out of the regular cabinet session, Rifi, a member of the Future movement, reiterated to reporters his conviction that Hezbollah evades taxes on Beirut's port and engages in money laundering. Rifi told journalists and Hezbollah was establishing a statelet inside the country, engaging in money-related corruption and protecting the murderers of late Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. The Future movement and Hezbollah had agreed during their latest dialogue session to bury recent tensions and restore the momentum of previous meetings. Social Affairs Minister Rashid Derbas says that Lebanon will ask the international community for $2.1 billion in assistance at the Kuwait Donors Conference this month. Derbas, who on Wednesday attended a ministerial meeting for the refugee crisis cell under Prime Minister Tamam Salam, told Al Liwa newspaper that Lebanon aims to urge the assistance to help it resolve problems linked to the displaced Syrians on the course of 2 years. The conference will be held in Kuwait on March 31st. And Salam will head the Lebanese delegation to the conference and will be accompanied by Derbas. The Gulf state has hosted previous such conferences in the past 2 years, which saw pledges of around $4 billion in aid, including $800 million from Kuwait alone. But UN humanitarian agencies have complained that many donors have not followed through on pledges, forcing them to cut assistance to millions of Syrians. Central Bank Governor Riyad Salemi is downplaying Washington's concerns on the possibility of involving Lebanese banks in money laundering operations to finance terrorism, in particular ISIS. Lebanon's banks are fortified, he says, due to the strict measures imposed by the central bank and the monitoring bodies. He stressed this in comments published in the Future newspaper. The high-ranking official pointed out that he soothed the fears expressed by U.S. Assistant Secretary of Treasury for Terrorist Financing Daniel Glazer during his short visit to Beirut on Tuesday. Glazer was worried of financial transfers to ISIS. He wanted to make sure that the money that is reaching the organization is not transferred through Lebanon's banking systems and from it to the global financial sector. The head of the Future parliamentary bloc, MP Fouad Senoura, is filing a complaint against Arab Tawheed's party leader and former minister Wiyam Wahab over remarks accusing the lawmaker of belonging to the Israeli project in the region. The state-run national news agency reported on Thursday that Senoura briefed General Prosecutor Samir Hammoud on the context of Wahab's statements during a televised interview, stressing that he reserves the right to file a lawsuit against the former minister. Wahab considered during a televised interview Senoura to be part of an Israeli project, accusing him of exerting efforts to topple Future movement chief Saad Hariri's interests. He also accused him of spreading division and sedition among the Lebanese, which only benefits the Jewish state. Tunisian authorities have named the two gunmen who launched an attack on a museum that killed 19 people, saying one of the assailants was known to intelligence services. 9 people have been arrested in connection with the attack. Officials identified the attackers as Yassine Labidi and Hatem Khashanoui, but said no formal links to particular armed group had been established. Both men were killed by security services in a raid after they attacked the National Bardo Museum. Details about the attackers' identity emerged as President Beij Caid Essebsi vowed to wage a merciless war against terrorism. The incident also left 40 people wounded. The gunmen opened fire on the tourists, including visitors from Japan, Italy, France, Australia, Colombia, Poland, and Spain, as they got off a bus and then chased them into the museum. It sparked outrage, with hundreds of people gathering later in a major thoroughfare of the capital, singing the national anthem and shouting slogans against the attackers, labeling them terrorists.
On behalf of myself and my husband, I want to join in with the others to express our condolences over the horrific event yesterday in Tunisia. Our hearts go out to the loved ones of those who were lost here in Japan and around the world. They are very much in our thoughts and prayers today.
I just wanted to say how saddened I am to learn of the news of the loss of a Japanese citizen in Tunisia, and our hearts go out to their family and the Japanese people, and we pray for a speedy recovery for all those who were injured in the attack.
Plainly, this is a terrorist outrage. Plainly, it is an attack by Islamist extremists on a fledgling democracy, a democracy which had thus far proven quite effective in resisting the kind of extremism characterised by Al-Qaeda and its variants and the ISIL or Daesh death cult in the Middle East. The Australian government condemns in the strongest possible terms this atrocity. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of the dead and with the wounded. I regret to say, Madam Speaker, that there was one Australian dual national reported to be amongst the dead. Madam Speaker, this person cannot currently be identified.
Coming up next, Al Pacino returns to the big screen with Danny Collins, a movie about a musician trying to make it big. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Future Television in English. U.S. and Iranian negotiators enter a fourth day of tough talks towards a landmark nuclear deal, with Tehran's foreign minister talking down prospects for a breakthrough this week. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Iranian counterpart have been haggling in Switzerland since Monday as they seek to agree the outlines of this potentially historic agreement by March 31st. They hope an accord to be finalized by July would convince the world, after a standoff now in its 13th year, that Iran will not build nuclear weapons under the guise of its civilian program. The agreement would involve Iran reducing its nuclear activities and ultra-tight inspections in exchange for relief from painful sanctions, strangling its oil exports and economy. Iran's Mohammad Javad Zarif said that foreign ministers from the other five powers involved Russia, China, Britain, France, and Germany, and were unlikely to join him in Kerry in Lausanne this week. The United Nations Human Rights Office says that Islamic State fighters may have committed genocide against the minority Yazidi community in Iraq, as well as crimes against humanity and war crimes against civilians, including children. In a report based on interviews with more than 100 alleged victims and witnesses, it urged the UN Security Council to refer the situation to the International Criminal Court for prosecution of the perpetrators. The report also said Iraqi government forces and affiliated militias may have committed some war crimes while battling the insurgency. The UN Human Rights Council launched its inquiry in September after the Islamist militant group seized large swaths of northern Iraq. The report also said the Council had found information that points of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, and that the Security Council should consider referring the situation in Iraq to the International Criminal Court. Yemeni special forces opposed to President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi battled loyalist militia in his southern power base of Aden, leaving 5 people dead and forcing the international airport to close. The heavily armed troops, who are allied with Shia militia in control of the capital Sana'a, advanced inside the airport perimeter, but the Hadi loyalists managed to secure the runway, according to security sources. Fighting also erupted in other parts of the port city, including outside the Aden branch of Yemen's central bank, as Special Forces Commander Abdel Hafiz al-Saqaf deployed his men at points around the city during the night. 3 Special Forces troops were killed and 6 wounded in the fighting. The militia said 2 Hadi loyalists were killed and 7 wounded. Travelers arriving at the international airport were told to turn back because of the fighting. Al Pacino is behind some of the most iconic film roles in history, like Michael Corleone and Tony Montana in The Godfather and Scarface. Surprisingly enough, he says that when Francis Ford Coppola approached him playing Corleone in The Godfather, he was not sure he was a good fit. For Pacino's latest movie, Danny Collins, where he plays an aging rock star, he says director Dan Fogelman also saw him for the role. The film premiered Wednesday in New York City and also stars Bobby Cannavale, Christopher Plummer, Annette Bening, and Jennifer Garner.
Oh, it was 100% Dan Fogelman. It was his idea that I play that part. And sometimes directors, if they like you for the role, like Francis Coppola was that way with me for Godfather. When I didn't quite see myself in the part, he did. I didn't see myself in this, Dan did. So you want to heed that if it happens, because they're seeing something maybe that you're not objective enough to see. Why not? I mean, we remade the first Scarface, which is 50 years, so sure.
All of us were drawn to the story. I mean, there aren't that many original dramas, comedies, I'm not sure which it is, out there right now. It's not a sequel, it's not based on a book or anything else. It has a germ of truth in the kind of the genesis of the story, and it was just a beautifully rendered script by Dan Fogelman.
You heard of the New Compass School in Manhattan?
What? It's the most progressive private school in the country. It's got a multimodal approach toward treating children with learning issues, particularly ADHD. I pull some strings, and you have an interview in 2 hours.
It has a shower!
I know! You go in there, it doesn't work!
Wait a second, do you really think that we haven't looked into every school there is?
Not this one.
How do you know that?
Well, you know, you can't afford it.
Stephen, would you mind your own business, please?
I'm sorry, excuse me. You mean that we have an interview as our family today in 2 hours at the New Compass School?
People wait 2 years for such an interview. 2 years. You have it in 2 hours. Just give me a day to do something good for you. And then, you know, I'm gone forever. And you still go to heaven because you're so damn tolerant. And I will still go to hell because, you know, you can't buy redemption. Everybody wins.
Danny Collins opens in Lebanon soon, and on that end, we end our bulletin for today now for a reminder of our top stories. A defense lawyer at the Special Tribunal for Lebanon says former President Emil Lahoud and his clique in the Lebanese Syrian security apparatus may have had motive to kill former Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. Tunisian authorities named the 2 gunmen who launched an attack on a museum that killed 19 tourists. And U.S. and Iranian negotiators enter a 4th day of tough talks towards a landmark nuclear deal. Tehran says it may not happen this week. Those are your headlines live on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal signing off. Have a good night.